The folder landed on the kitchen table in front of me, like a verdict. My Uncle Denton stood on the other side of it, arms crossed, the posture of someone who had already decided the outcome and was waiting for me to catch up. My Aunt Willa sat near the window. My cousin Cade leaned against the far wall with his phone at his side, which I didn't fully register until later. My mother was beside me. Not beside me the way a parent stood beside a child they were protecting. Beside me, the way a person stood when they needed something from someone and were making sure their proximity communicated the urgency of that need. The folder contained a renunciation form. My grandfather's estate, my inheritance from the man who had raised me to be careful and had apparently been more careful than any of us knew. Denton spoke. His voice had the weight of someone accustomed to rooms rearranging around his preferences. He said it was cleaner this way. He said the estate was complicated, and this simplified things. He said family needed to stay together on these decisions. My mother leaned slightly closer. "You'll sign this," she said quietly, "or you find somewhere else to live." I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking. Denton grabbed the papers the moment I finished. Like he had won. 2 hours later, someone knocked at the door. The man at the door was in his 60s. Neat gray suit, briefcase, the specific, unhurried quality of someone whose time had a value that made rushing unnecessary. He introduced himself. "Mr. Bennett?" He was my grandfather's attorney and had been the primary executor of the estate since the planning documents had been completed. He asked to speak with me. Denton appeared immediately behind my mother in the doorway. The specific appearance of a person who had not been invited into a conversation but had decided their presence was appropriate anyway. My aunt materialized in the hallway behind him, arms at her sides. Mr. Bennett looked at both of them with complete professional composure. "Privately," he said. He said it the way people said things they did not intend to negotiate. Denton said something about family representation, about how these matters concerned everyone present. Mr. Bennett waited, without responding, without adjusting. The specific patience of someone who had been in rooms with difficult people before and had learned that silence was more efficient than argument. Denton eventually moved back 2 steps. Mr. Bennett turned to me. His eyes were direct and clear. "Did you sign that document under duress?" he said. "Yes or no?" My mother was watching me from the kitchen doorway. Her eyes were asking me something, asking me to say no. "My name is Brooke Callahan. I have been the peacekeeper in this family since before I understood what the word meant. The one who apologized first. The one who absorbed tension so other people didn't have to feel it. The one who was described as so mature in the voice adults used when they meant so convenient. I was told you're mature as praise, as acknowledgement of something good in me. I understand now what it actually was. It was a training system. If Brooke handles it quietly, we don't have to. If Brooke accepts the situation, we don't have to change it. If Brooke is mature, we can keep being immature without consequence." Years of that. Years of swallowing things that should have been said, of accepting arrangements I had not agreed to, of being flexible enough that the people around me never had to be. My grandfather had seen it. I knew that even before Mr. Bennett arrived. I had felt it in the way my grandfather spoke to me. The specific attention of someone who was watching something happen to someone they cared about and was doing something about it quietly. Back in the present, Mr. Bennett was waiting for my answer. My mother's eyes were doing the thing they did when she needed me to perform. I looked at Mr. Bennett instead. The word came out before I could protect it. "Yes." My voice shook, just slightly. The specific shake of a body processing something the mind has already committed to. I didn't take it back. My mother inhaled sharply. The specific intake of breath that meant I had done something that would have consequences for her. That I was about to discover what those consequences felt like. Mr. Bennett nodded once, not with satisfaction, not with drama. The nod of someone receiving information that confirmed what they had already been prepared to receive. He looked at me steadily. "Then the document you signed may be legally invalid," he said. He paused. Then he said the second part. "And there's more you need to know." He reached into his briefcase, removed an envelope. It was sealed with tape that had yellowed slightly at the edges. My name was on the front, written in my grandfather's handwriting. The specific handwriting I had watched form letters since I was 5 years old. My hands started trembling when I reached for it. Denton stepped forward. His voice was controlled, but his eyes were not. "That letter belongs to the family," he said. The word family used as a category that included him and excluded me. Mr. Bennet looked at Denton. He didn't speak immediately. The look was enough. The specific look of someone who had authority in the room and was communicating it without raising his voice. Denton stopped moving. "This letter belongs to Brooke," Mr. Bennet said. Clear, final. The voice of someone reading language from a document rather than offering a personal opinion. Denton's face flushed. The specific redness that appeared when he encountered a limit he hadn't expected. I opened the envelope. My grandfather's handwriting filled the page in the careful way he wrote when something mattered. Not his quick grocery list writing, his considered writing. The first line. "If they pressured you, this is exactly why I planned ahead." I read it twice. My throat tightened, because it was so perfectly him, so completely him. The specific communication style of a man who had watched his family for decades and understood exactly what they were capable of and had decided the appropriate response was preparation rather than hope. He had known. He had known they would do this, and he had done something about it before they got the chance. My hands were still trembling when I looked up. Mr. Bennet was watching me. "I need you to come to my office tomorrow," he said. "Alone." He said the last word with enough quiet emphasis that everyone in the room understood it was directed at them. Mr. Bennet left at 6:15. The house changed the moment the door closed behind him. Mom turned first. Her expression had been in its company setting while the lawyer was present. Controlled. Composed. The face she wore when outside eyes were on her. The moment the door latched, that face came off. She said I had embarrassed her. She said I had made the family look unstable. She said, why didn't I just say no when he asked, the way she needed me to? I stood and listened to all of it. Then I said, he asked me a direct question. Mom's voice dropped. Not quieter from calm, quieter from the specific place where fear lived in her. She said if I fought this, Denton would destroy us. She said those exact words. Destroy us. And I understood something clearly watching her face. She was not angry at me for my honesty. She was afraid. Genuinely afraid of Denton in a way that had been operating underneath her behavior for years without my fully recognizing it as fear rather than preference. She had chosen him over me. Not because she loved him more. Because she was afraid of what he would do if she didn't. Understanding that helped me. And it didn't change what I was going to do. My Aunt Willa found me in the kitchen before dinner. Her approach was different from Denton's directness or my mother's tears. Willa operated in the softer register. The concerned voice. The gentle eyes that suggested she was difficult things out of love rather than strategy. She said my grandfather had not been well at the end. Said his thinking had become unreliable. Said decisions made in that state might not reflect what he truly intended. I listened to her describe my grandfather as confused. The man who had written me a letter anticipating his family's exact behavior, who had named the coercion before it happened, who had structured his estate around protecting me specifically. Confused. I did not argue. Not because I lacked arguments, because I had learned something from years of watching how Willa operated. Arguing gave her material. Silence gave her nothing. I said I needed to think and walked toward my room. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Cade. We have video of you signing. Don't try anything. I stopped walking, picked up the phone, read it twice. They had filmed me, during the signing, filmed it deliberately as evidence against any future challenge. I screenshot the message, emailed it to myself immediately. Then my phone rang. Mr. Bennet's number. Mr. Bennet's voice on the phone was calm in the way of someone who had information and knew how to carry it. He told me not to sign anything else. No additional documents, no corrections, no follow-up forms, regardless of how they were described or who brought them. They're panicking, he said. Panicking people make offers. Don't take any of them. I asked him how he knew they were panicking. He said the pattern of behavior since the will had been filed was consistent with people who understood there was a protection mechanism built into the estate and were trying to outrun it. I thought about my grandfather. About a flashback that arrived fully formed while Mr. Bennet spoke. My cousin Cade being praised at family dinners. Being praised simply for existing, for being Denton's son. While I sat at the other end of the table and was praised for being helpful. For being useful, for making things easier. My grandfather had always noticed. He would catch my eye across the table, a small specific look. Once, when I was 17, he had handed me an envelope, cash. He had said it was for textbooks. He had said it quietly, away from the others. He had said they won't support you the way they should. He had been preparing me quietly for years. My uncle's voice, announcing a family meeting. Tonight, the meeting looked like an intervention. They had arranged the living room furniture into a configuration that placed me in the center. The specific geometry of a room organized to create a single focal point. Denton sat across from me. His voice was the voice he used when he was performing leadership. Calm. Measured. The voice he must have practiced somewhere. He spoke about family unity. About the complexity of estate administration. About decisions that needed to be made together to protect everyone's interests. My aunt cried at the appropriate moments, precise and efficient. My mother sat beside me, her body was rigid. The rigidity of someone who had been told their role in advance and was holding it. I listened to all of it. I noticed the folder was not in the room, the renunciation folder that Denton had grabbed from my hands 2 hours earlier. He had told me it was done, filed, processed, complete. The folder was gone. I said nothing. I cataloged, then Denton said it. We filed it today. The renunciation is registered. It's done. He said done with the specific satisfaction of someone closing a door they had opened and was now choosing to close. I looked at him calmly and thought about what Mr. Bennet had said about panicking. I went to bed at 10:30. At 2 in the morning, I woke up and reached for my phone automatically. Opened my banking app the way I checked it when something had been making me uneasy. The app asked for my password. I entered it. Wrong password. I tried again. Wrong password. My pulse spiked. I went through the account recovery process. Reset the password through my personal email. Got back in. The account was intact. Nothing transferred, but there was a pending transaction, listed under the description estate reimbursement. I looked at the recipient name on the pending transfer. It matched my uncle. I screenshot it, emailed the screenshot to myself with a timestamp note. Then I opened a folder on my phone and started adding everything chronologically. The threat to kick me out, the signing, Cade's text about the video, the family meeting, the claim that the filing was done, this pending transfer, all of it in order, all of it dated. At 3 in the morning, I went to the drawer where my mother kept family documents, took my birth certificate, my social security card, and my passport, put them in my bag, lay back down on the bed. Did not sleep again that night. I left the next morning while my mother was making coffee. I said I had an appointment. She looked at my bag. Something moved through her face. She started to say something about coming back before dinner. I said I would be in touch. I drove to Petra's house. Petra's mother opened the door before I could knock. She looked at my face and my overnight bag, and she asked no questions. She hugged me the way someone hugged a person who had been carrying something for too long and had finally arrived somewhere where they were allowed to put it down. I sat at her kitchen table and she made tea, and I told her the general shape of things without all the details. She said I could stay as long as I needed. My phone buzzed on the table. Mom. I looked at the message. Come home. We can fix this. Please. 3 sentences. The progression of someone moving through denial and into the beginning of something closer to reality. I did not reply. At 9, I drove to Mr. Bennet's office. He was waiting for me. His assistant showed me directly in. Mr. Bennet had the estate file open on his desk. He looked up when I sat down. There's something you need to understand about what your grandfather built, he said. Mr. Bennet explained the estate carefully. He used plain language, the specific plain language of someone who understood that legal concepts required translation to be genuinely understood rather than simply heard. He explained the renunciation I had signed. He explained what duress meant in a legal context. He explained the specific conditions under which a signed document could be challenged if the signing circumstances had been coerced. My grandfather had anticipated coercion. Those were Mr. Bennet's exact words. He had spoken with my grandfather over several months, had listened to his concerns about specific family members, had built protections into the estate structure that would activate under specific circumstances. He did not believe you would be given a free choice, Mr. Bennet said. He prepared for the alternative. My throat tightened. He slid a document across the desk. I looked at it, read the first paragraph twice. The inheritance wasn't structured as a simple cash transfer. There was an asset, a stake in a small property enterprise my grandfather had spent 30 years building. A business with a specific clause written into the ownership documents. Any evidence of coercion regarding the beneficiary's signature would trigger an independent review. Mr. Bennet looked at me over the top of the document. Your family's behavior, he said carefully, activates the protection clause. He paused. Your uncle already attempted to transfer the business asset. That attempt is now flagged. The investigation letter arrived at Denton's address on a Friday. Mr. Bennet told me about it before Denton received it. He wanted me to understand what was coming, that a formal request for testimony about the signing circumstances had been sent, that both Denton and my mother would be asked to provide accounts. My phone rang 30 minutes after Mr. Bennet told me this. Denton's number. The voice on the other end was the voice he used when he needed something from someone he couldn't afford to alienate. The syrupy version. The one that arrived when charm was the last available tool. Brooke, he said, let's talk. Just us. I think there's been some misunderstanding. I listened to approximately 4 seconds of that. Then I ended the call. Everything through Mr. Bennet. That was the instruction, and I followed it completely. Not out of strategy alone, because talking to Denton without legal counsel present was a way of giving him an opportunity I had no interest in providing. An hour later, Mother left a voicemail. She was crying. She said they were blaming her. Said Denton had told the investigator that the coercion had been primarily my mother's doing, that she had initiated the pressure while he was simply present. I sat with the message, then I deleted it, and went to meet her. I chose a coffee shop in the middle of town, public, busy. A table near the window where I could see the entrance clearly. Mom arrived 5 minutes late. She sat down without ordering anything. She looked tired, in a way that was different from her usual tired. The specific exhaustion of someone whose supporting structure had shifted and revealed what was underneath. She talked for a few minutes. About the pressure. About how long it had been building. About Denton and the specific ways he had been managing her since my grandfather became ill. Then she said it directly. She said Denton had threatened to cut her out financially if she didn't help him manage me. Those were her exact words. Manage me. He had needed her compliance to make the signing happen, had secured it through her financial vulnerability. I listened to all of this. I felt the complicated grief of understanding someone you love as a person who was also afraid and had consistently chosen fear over you. She looked at me with the exhausted eyes of someone who knew the accounting was overdue. He says he's going to tell everyone you're unstable, she said quietly. I looked at her. Let him, I said, and picked up my coffee. The texts started arriving over the weekend. Family members, extended, some I had not spoken to in over a year. Messages that asked why I was doing this. That said Denton had taken care of Granddad in his final months. That said the family was devastated. That said I was tearing things apart over money. Each message had the same shape, the same rhythm, the same specific framing. Denton had been busy. He had been moving through his network, planting the version of events he needed people to accept before the legal process could deliver the accurate one. I screenshot each message, added them to the folder. Then I called Mr. Bennet. He had something for me. He said the estate file contained documentation my grandfather had added over the last 2 years of his life. Notes about his concerns, specific observations about Denton's behavior, financial records that had been carefully logged. Your grandfather was protecting the record, Mr. Bennet said. Then he paused. There is also a sealed addendum, he said. His voice was careful the way it was careful when something significant required the appropriate weight. It is marked, open, if coercion occurs. Mr. Bennet and I opened the addendum together. I sat on the other side of his desk with my hands folded in my lap. He slit the envelope open carefully. The kind of deliberate movement that communicated what was inside deserved to be treated with respect. Inside was a letter. 3 pages. My grandfather's handwriting, dated 14 months before his death. And a separate sealed instruction page with his signature witnessed by 2 people I didn't recognize. Witnesses from outside the family. He had been careful. Carefully, deliberately, specifically careful. My grandfather described his concerns about Denton's behavior over the previous years, about financial decisions made around family assets without proper consultation, about the pattern of control he had watched Denton build. Then the instruction page. If coercion regarding Brooke's inheritance is proven, the terms of her designation are elevated. She becomes primary beneficiary. Denton's authority as co-executor is suspended pending review. The words primary beneficiary sat on the page. My chest ached. He had really seen me. Not just in the general way of a grandfather loving a grandchild. He had seen specifically what was happening to me and had done the specific work of protecting me from it. Mr. Bennet set the page down gently. This could remove your uncle entirely from the estate, he said. My cousin Cade sent a voice note on a Tuesday evening. He didn't mean to send it to me. I think he meant to send it to someone in their group, a friend. Maybe Denton. The kind of casual communication that gets misdirected when you're moving too quickly and not being careful. I listened to it once. Then I sat very still. Cade's voice was bright. The specific brightness of someone who had done something and was enjoying the feeling of having done it. The voice of someone who was not thinking about consequences because consequences had never felt like something that applied to him personally. He said they had already spent part of it. He said it with the casual ease of someone describing a purchase they were pleased with. He mentioned an amount. He mentioned a destination. Then he laughed. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. The specific arrogance of someone who had spent their entire life watching their father operate without accountability and had absorbed the belief that this was simply how things worked. I forwarded the voice note to my email immediately. Then I called Mr. Bennet. He answered on the second ring. I told him what I had. He was quiet for one moment. Forward that to me, he said. Right now, immediately. His voice was no longer the careful, neutral voice. It was something more urgent. The hearing date arrived in an official letter. Administrative proceeding. Estate dispute with coercion provisions. Date, time, location. The language of formal process applied to a situation that had been made out of family and fear and a grandfather's careful planning. Denton called me 2 days after the letter arrived. I was outside my workplace when it rang. I had just finished a shift and was walking toward the parking lot, and his number appeared on my screen like a test. I let it ring. He called back immediately. I let that ring too. Then he appeared in person the following morning. He was standing near the entrance to my workplace when I arrived. His posture was the helpful posture, the fatherly posture, hands slightly open, expression arranged into concern. There were 2 coworkers behind me within earshot. I stopped, looked at him. He started talking about the misunderstanding, about what we could work out together, about how he only wanted what was best for the family. I kept my voice completely level. Contact my attorney, I said, loud enough for the people behind me to hear. Denton's expression flickered, the mask over the anger underneath it. He stepped closer. You'll regret humiliating me, he said, very low, very cold. I walked inside and immediately texted Mr. Bennet about the encounter. Mr. Bennet had one more thing. He asked me to come to his office on a Thursday afternoon. Said there was something I needed to see before the hearing. Something my grandfather had left that completed the picture. I sat across from his desk. He turned his laptop screen toward me. A video file, recorded on a date that was 2 years before my grandfather's death. He was sitting in what I recognized as Mr. Bennet's conference room. 2 other people in the frame. Witnesses I didn't know. My grandfather looked directly at the camera. His voice was completely clear, his thinking completely organized. The voice of a man who was making a record because he understood the record would need to exist. He spoke about his estate, about his intentions, about each person he was leaving things to, and why. When he reached my name, his voice changed slightly, not weaker, more deliberate. He said he had watched me be given less than I was owed for a long time. He said he had watched certain family members treat access to resources as leverage. He said he had structured his estate specifically to prevent that pattern from continuing after his death. Then he said the last thing. He looked at the camera. If they force her to sign anything, I want consequences, he said. Those consequences are already built in. My hands covered my mouth. I cried quietly. Not from grief. From relief. The hearing was in a formal conference room at the estate arbitration office. 6 people at the table. Mr. Bennett beside me, Denton across with his attorney, my mother sitting near the wall, not at the table, the hearing officer at the head of the room. I had practiced what I was going to say. Not a speech, not a performance, just the accurate account of what had happened in the order it had happened. The hearing officer asked me to describe the circumstances of the signing. My voice shook when I started. Not from weakness, from the specific physical response of a body that understood the weight of what it was doing. I was describing my mother's threat and my uncle's pressure and my cousin filming in the corner in a formal proceeding with legal standing. My voice shook, but I did not stop. I did not qualify. I did not soften. I did not rearrange the facts to protect anyone's feelings. I described what had happened. When I finished, the hearing officer made a note. She said the testimony indicated clear indicators of duress. She said the phrase with the specific weight of someone speaking into a formal record. She turned to Mr. Bennett. He opened his folder, placed the addendum on the table, and the video. Denton's attorney tried to reframe the addendum, said it was ambiguous, said the coercion standard was a high bar, said a family member encouraging a signature was not the same as the legal definition of duress. Mr. Bennett let him finish. Then he introduced the video. The hearing officer watched it on a laptop that was turned to face the room. The audio came through clearly. My grandfather's voice filling the conference space with the specific deliberateness of someone who had been very careful about what they chose to say permanently. If they force her to sign anything, I want consequences. Denton's attorney sat back when it ended. Mr. Bennett added the addendum. Read the relevant section aloud. Then he added Cade's voice note. Played it for the room. Cade's bright, careless voice. We already spent part of it. The amount named. The specificity of someone who had not been thinking about what they were saying. The hearing officer's expression during the voice note was the expression of someone adding a significant data point to a picture that had already been forming. She looked at Denton. Denton's attorney leaned close and said something to him. Denton's face was draining. The color leaving the specific way color left faces when the version of events someone had been maintaining collapsed under the weight of what actually existed in documented form. The smugness. Gone. In its place, something I had never seen on his face before. Panic. The hearing officer issued the preliminary findings that afternoon. Mr. Bennett walked me through each point in his office. The addendum had been formally triggered by the documented coercion. Denton's authority as co-executor was suspended effective immediately, pending the completion of the review. The attempted transfer of the business asset had been flagged as unauthorized. Repayment of the amount Cade had referenced in the voice note was ordered. Penalties for the unauthorized transfer were calculated and included. Denton's attorney had said very little during the second half of the hearing. Not because he lacked skill, because the documentation my grandfather had built was the kind that skill couldn't dismantle. It had been constructed over years by someone who understood how his family operated and had made sure the record was clean and complete and witnessed by people who had no stake in its outcome. Mr. Bennett set the last document down. He looked at me. "There's one more item," he said. He slid a page across the desk. "Your grandfather also set aside a separate fund. He anticipated you might choose to leave, might need support to establish your own life." He tapped the page. The amount on it was specific, real. The amount of someone who had thought carefully about what starting over actually required. "It's yours," Mr. Bennett said, "clean and uncontested." I received the inheritance legally and on the timeline Mr. Bennett had outlined. Denton did not contest the final determination. His attorney had advised against it. The combination of the video, the addendum, the voice note, the coercion testimony, and the unauthorized transfer documentation had constructed a picture that was not navigable in his favor. He did not contact me after the final order was issued. My mother called once. I let it go to voicemail. The message was long and covered several positions simultaneously. She said she was sorry. She said she had been afraid. She said she hoped I could understand. I listened to it once. I understood. I genuinely did. Understanding and forgiveness were different processes on different timelines. I could understand clearly and still need significant distance. I moved into a small apartment on a Saturday in October. My key, my address, my silence. I put my grandfather's letter in a frame on the desk. Not the whole letter. The first line, "If they pressured you, this is exactly why I planned ahead." I looked at it while I arranged the rest of the room. He had seen me, had seen what they were doing, and had done something about it before they could finish. That was the inheritance that mattered more than any legal document. Being seen, clearly and completely, by someone who loved you enough to plan ahead. I started therapy in November. The therapist had a direct manner I appreciated. She did not perform sympathy. She asked specific questions and listened to the answers with the focused attention of someone building an accurate picture. In the third session, she asked me about the phrase my mother had used when I was young. "You're so mature." I told her what I had come to understand about it. She nodded. Then she said something I wrote down afterward. "The people who told you that were describing what they needed from you," she said, "not what you were." I sat with that for the rest of the hour. Chosen family dinners happened on Sunday evenings at Petra's house. 6 people. Sometimes 7. Nobody who threatened love. Nobody who used access to warmth as leverage. Nobody who photographed you signing things. Just people who cooked together and argued about movies and told the truth without strategy. My relatives did not contact me again with any substance. One cousin texted a holiday message in December. I replied with a brief neutral response and let it end there. The control they had exercised for years had depended on my believing I had no alternative. I had alternatives. I had always had alternatives. I had just needed someone. My grandfather, Mr. Bennett, Petra's mother, my therapist, to help me see them clearly. Spring arrived the way spring arrived in the years when you had done the hard work during winter, noticeably. With the specific quality of light that felt like something had shifted structurally rather than just seasonally. I had work I was proud of, not because it was impressive to other people, because it was mine, chosen. Built from skills I had developed rather than assigned by people who needed me to stay in a particular role. I had savings, the specific security of money in an account that belonged only to me, that could not be pending transferred by someone who had decided it was theirs. I visited my grandfather's grave once in April. I stood there for a while. I didn't say much. My grandfather had not been a person who required a lot of words. He was the kind of person who communicated through actions, through preparation, through the careful letter he had written, anticipating exactly what would happen. I told him the thing I thought he would have wanted to know, that it had worked, that his planning had protected me, that I had answered the lawyer's question honestly, that I had not folded, that I was okay, that I was more than okay. Walking back to my car, I thought about the pen in my hand at the kitchen table. The folder being forced toward me. The moment I had signed because I had been given no choice. They had forced my hand to sign. So I signed my name to a life without them.